This is how we usually do it. We're going to change it up a little bit. And here are the next 4 labs. So today, analyzing your course. Tomorrow, redesigning your course. Of course, you will not be able to do all of these things in a day because that's impossible. Next week, building feedback into your course. And then next week, Thursday, this is next week, like Tuesday and Wednesday. Next week, Tuesday, building feedback into your course. Next week, Wednesday, best of course design tips. A lot of these are going to be reviews of things that we've already covered, content that we've already created, universal design, the Wisconsin experience, talking about templates. So we're taking a lot of those labs and sort of compressing them into these. So, to start off, well, I'm going to put this up, but actually I want to start off by who are we and why are we here? What do we hope to get out of today? And any specifics would be great, because then we can address this. Lynn.
Hello, I'm Lynn. I'm from biochemistry. I have used Canvas Analytics a fair amount, so I can talk about that.
Excellent.
To kind of analyze how heavily different online resources are used in my course. I think one question that I have, which is not really Canvas related, but how do we get useful things out of course evaluations? So I'm curious if people write questions for your course evaluations that you feel work well, because my sort of standard questions like how would you improve this course do not really very often give useful feedback. And I feel like the students are the expert in their experience in my course and probably do have ideas for how to improve it, but I don't know how to draw them out.
Excellent. This is one of the things that I hope to talk about. Probably more so in tomorrow's, next week, Wednesdays, talking about feedback.
Yeah.
But we'll hit on it today as well. Very good. And then you also said things about course Canvas analytics, but then you also said that you use the other tools for online resources, and you do analytics on the other tools as well. So Kaltura.
I do use Kaltura. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And do you do any of the other Top Hat or anything else?
I don't use Top Hat, no. So just Canvas and Kaltura.
Canvas and Kaltura analytics.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Excellent. Dustin.
Okay, I'm Dustin, faculty emeritus in cultural studies. So I used to use Devour when I was teaching actively, and I don't probably never use Canvas per se, but I'm just here as an overview of what we're doing with it. And I do some informal consulting in Indonesia, people trying to develop things software, so I have an idea of what's being done here, ideas.
All right, so more ideas. And hopefully a lot of what we talk about is not necessarily platform specific. Canvas analytics will be, but the idea of getting feedback or what can we learn from our course, you can do that in any course, and probably already have if you've made it to emeritus. Tim.
Yeah, so I'm Tim. I'm in music, and I have a new role at the university working in the Division of Diversity. So
Congratulations on your job.
Going to be helping students. And since I've not taught a course yet, but I will be in the fall, I'm curious, like, what kind of questions would be useful to ask old TAs or the professor, like how to make it better. So that's what I'm just curious about. What kind of questions should I be asking?
Oh, I love that. So there's the idea of analyzing your own course, but there's also the question, or how do I get other people to analyze their course and give me what they've learned so that I can teach the course better? Learning from prior instructors. Very cool. And Kenny.
Kenny, I'm a grad student in the kinesiology department, and I guess I'm going to second the Canvas and Kaltura analytics. That's what we use heavily in our course. We record lectures because 2/3 the students don't show up, so I'm curious. If they're watching them, how are they doing in the class compared to those who are for sure coming? So yeah.
I want to put that down. 2/3 don't show up. How do I know if what? Excellent. Jennifer?
I'm Jennifer. I'm a grad student and a project assistant who helps with the active teaching labs. And I actually have some ideas for course evals, so hopefully I can contribute a little bit there. And then, yeah, just interested in what kinds of questions people find are useful to ask and get useful feedback instead of students venting. So, yeah.
Versus venting.
Something like that.
Yeah. And Margaret.
Hello, I'm Margaret, grad student at the iSchool. I'm working here with Jennifer and John in the active teaching lab. And you know, I'm really an analyst, and so I was excited to see the word analyzing. And so, you know, we talk about data-driven decision making, so that would be my area of interest is, are there templates created to help gather the data, analyze the data, make it actionable information? Otherwise, we're just going through the motions.
All right, I'm gonna put learning analytics dashboard,
Yeah.
and we're not gonna get into that too much,
I
but
know, John, but you asked, so I'm telling you.
well, and that's good because it's a thing.
It's okay to dream, right?
It's okay to dream, and the good news is they are creating one
Yeah.
using Tableau, so very fancy, expensive software, and they're giving you some information and ability, both for the instructors and students to dig down into their course and compare themselves with aggregated anonymous others in the class, and for the instructors to look at individual students versus the other students.
I think it's, and don't lose the piece about tying that to real action and changes. Because you know, oftentimes, you know, I would get feedback on a course I taught, and it's the most inflammatory remarks that would just keep me up at night. Should I change this? And should I change that? And you know, and then you realize that was like one person out of 300. And I think the dashboard or some kind of a weighting system will help moderate those, you know, those kinds of remarks that really can be very upsetting to hear some things, but then in comparison to all the other people who didn't, yeah, venting, right, exactly.
Yeah, putting the venting into perspective. And this is the thing that we do as humans, right? We can have 99% of the people in our interactions be really positive interactions. One person flips us off as we bike by, and we think about that all day. And it's but that's, you know, most of the day is really beautiful. We do a good job in being good citizens, but somehow we bothered that one person enough to inflict that. Sorry. All right. So the hard thing is going to be for me to not go here right away. But if you promise to not come to that, we can.
I can't come to that actually.
Okay, well, there you go. All right, well, let's look at our own course and think about a course. And if you're not teaching a course, think about any course that you've been in. What has worked well, and how do you know that it's worked well? And does it just work well for you as a student or as an instructor, or does it work well for your students? What are the indicators that something is working well or not well? And then there's the not well part. And finally, we're going to think about how do we build that constant improvement into the structure of the course. Margaret?
didn't know if you were actually wanting responses yet, but,
Well, take a moment to think about it
Yeah.
first, and then we will.
and we'll try.
I'll go fill up my plate with fruit while you do this, just as a way to build in some time and reflection.
I love the healthy food you've been ordering.
Good.
Yes, I second that.
We've got pushback because for leftovers, some of our staff dislikes that we don't have cookies.
Oh, I see.
But the fruit was an actionable from feedback. It's
Was it
a perfect
really?
example for
Yeah,
today.
so
Uh,
if for no other reason than to get better food, you should fill out the green reflection sheets.
Jennifer, was it one angry person and then we, or, you know?
No,
The
the
squeaky
angry
wheel-
person
squeaky
was
wheel.
pro cookie, and there were multiples for the healthier options.
That's funny.
All right, so what are our data points? What do we observe in our classes? Margaret, you got something?
Sure, I'll kick off and get it going. So, you said, what do we know works well in our courses?
Yep.
One
And
of,
what?
one of the barometers for me when I'm teaching is, are my students asking the right kinds of questions? Because my teaching style is often meant to engage and stimulate additional ideas. And if they start asking what I would just call good questions, then I know they've connected the dots. And so, if they're not asking questions, then I say to myself, do they understand the content? So for me, that's a real sort of red flag. Is the value of the questions in which they're asking, whether they've taken it to the next level.
Right, and we've all witnessed this, right? We go through something, we're expecting something, somebody comes up with a total non sequitur, and we're like, where did that come from? That is, how did we get to this? And it might be an interesting non sequitur, but it's not, it's a departure from where I thought I was going and bringing the class with.
And then you have to think, where do I go next?
Right.
So
How do I,
go backwards
what is
or-
the actionable moment
Right.
here? What can I do about that? Yeah.
Right.
Good. Other things.
So if students have somehow been motivated to prepare for the class that day, not assuming that they can just show up and take it in.
And what's an indicator that they've prepared?
They know what they're going to be doing in class that day.
How do you know whether they know or don't know what they're doing? Going to be doing? I'm sorry, pressing on this.
No, that's okay. So if you're doing some sort of activity that's a process, they know what the steps are in the process. They're not like reading the instructions as you're going. Or if you're having a discussion, they incorporate the evidence, whatever preparation that you have them do, you see that coming out in the discussion.
All right, so evidence and behavior.
Yeah.
That's a big one for me too. I teach a lab course and students are supposed to come prepared and
Yeah.
ready to go, and it's really easy to tell which ones
I'm sure.
lived in one thing.
Because people will like
Look
what
around.
you're supposed
Yeah.
to do or
Yeah.
and follow what other people are doing and try to, so you can tell a lot from their faces, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing if you have a lecture and people are like doing this, you can tell, is this working well? Not for this one person, it's not. And it might not be my fault, it might be that they stayed up all night studying for the exam that was held an hour ahead of time and now they're just wiped out entirely. But we still take it personally even if it's not our fault. And we still say that didn't work out well for that one person even though everyone else seems engaged. So faces is another one. How about in group work? How do you know if group work is working? Chatter, yeah. Talk on task,
Fantastic.
right? And you can probably, in your labs as well, you can tell when this might be really loud and talking, but if they're not focused on what they're doing. Anything else?
One thing that one of my teachers does is he gets live student feedback. So if they've just done a reading, they'll ask, how was that reading? Like thumbs up, thumbs down, and they'll
Right, quick survey.
yeah, like kind of a survey. And then even though he can't change it for that particular course, because sometimes we'll say something like, oh yeah, in past courses, a lot of students say they had a hard time with this reading, or I was like on the fence about whether I should do this reading or that reading. So I think he's kind of using this information to decide if he's going to use it in the future.
All right, so yeah, different types of participation, whether it's Top Hat student response system or something much less high-tech as using your mobile devices. Are you getting this? Not if you are. You know, stand up, do a turnaround dance if you're not. You never do that. Or Q&A, and you know, just having people respond. And again, it's the talk on task, it's the faces, it's the body language, the nonverbals. All right, how about in the online environment or in the blended environment? How do you find out whether they're engaged or whether something is successful or not successful?
I use like low stakes quizzes, so participation in low stakes quizzes.
I'll put a dotted line here, even though I don't know if I need to. All right, quizzes, low stakes quizzes. Right, and you can do that to get them even prepared for class. So take this quiz beforehand, and that way you know at least that they've done something, which is something positive, forward progress. So in those low stakes quizzes, one of the things is the summative feedback, right? What do the grades tell me? If they all got number 2 wrong, then before we start on today's activity, I should revisit number 2 and help them figure that out so that they don't go down a garden path or a wrong turn.
I also set up my quizzes to, if they put a wrong answer in, you can have a little explanation of the right answer.
Feedback, yeah. Quizzes with feedback. And we will be talking about that tomorrow when we're talking about feedback and quizzes, because that's the student's number 1 thing, maybe number 2 thing. 1, why am I learning this? Is this useful for me? But 2, am I learning it or am I going off in a total wrong direction? We really need to give them that feedback to know that they are on course and doing a good job. All right. Other things that you can look at for online, whether it's an online course or whether it's just an assignment that you've given them to do outside of class.
You can use some of the tools, like the analytics tools, just to see if they're clicking on things.
All right. Participation, like yep. Other things?
That's actually really interesting because I used to work at a company that made iPhone apps, and you're like totally focused on like what are they clicking on when I change this or that. You know, if I word it this way, like will they click on it 10 times more likely than if I word it that way?
And you can do A/B testing. So you have this group of users does this color shape of buttons, and this group of users has a red button instead of a green button. Do they like the red button or the blue button, green button?
Right.
Which one do they like better?
Right.
And you know, if 10% more like the red button, maybe we'll make it all red for everybody. See what happens.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, I sort of assume that students know they have to do a quiz, so they'll find their way to a quiz. But can you set up Canvas in such a way that they're sort of more likely to
Right.
do what you want them to do?
Like a fun one.
So, yeah, what would we call that? We would call it,
User design or user experience design or something.
yeah, UX, guide the students. And this is one of the big pluses for really well-designed modules. Do this, then do this, then do this. Or what some instructors will do is they'll have a page that gives context and then a link to the next thing that they do. More context and then a link to the next thing that they do. So they're very much, they can't, if you say, go take the next quiz, but you don't put a link to the quiz, and they have to go to the side and click on quizzes and then go find today's quiz. Well, is it this one or is it that one? Like you're introducing extra opportunities for them to go astray. Whereas if you have this all in one single flowing, either the module design, do this, check, do this, check, do this, check, or a page design that gives context around it, then they're less likely to get lost. Have any of you ever gotten emails from students asking how do I do this assignment? What am I supposed to do? I didn't understand that, right? So, things like emails or questions. One of my favorite is if I do a bad job in designing an assignment, and then when it's due that day, they come in and they say, oh yeah, I couldn't get that to work. So, right, it was due, you had a week to do it. You could have told me in an email that it didn't work, and I would have been able to fix it, but that doesn't help them out, because then they have to do it. So then I get that, and I'm set back another week or whatever, as I have to redesign that and clarify, okay, do this, and this time, if something doesn't work, let me know right away and I'll fix it. Margaret?
And I have a course now that I think it's in Canvas, and I think it's been sort of copied and duplicated over several terms. And so instructions for one assignment are different on all these different pages. It appears on the pages page, and it appears in the syllabus as two different assignments worth different points. And then occasionally it'll appear in a discussion from an old. So I would say that I'm not sure that it really works well to duplicate courses over and over and over again, because the students don't know which is real. And I kind of get messed up with that with one of my assignments. She's like, why'd you do this? And I'm like, well, that's what the instructions said. And I had to point her to the instructions that I looked at. And she's like, oh no, we weren't using those instructions. We were using these.
Yeah.
But as a student, you expect a little bit of an intuitive interface flow, but that's a really, really high bar to meet.
It is.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the adage of keeping it simple.
Keep it
Right,
simple.
the more complications you have, the more iterations you have, where you leave all of last year's stuff in there, but you just say, oh, this year we're going to focus on these things. And a really good example of that is our own active teaching lab page. Terrible design, but we'll probably never address it. Okay, so given this data, what do we do with it, and how do we use it to build constant improvement into our course? First of all, when can these improvement cycles happen? When do you make changes to your course?
Well, I would think that sometimes if something's like a train wreck, like maybe you're leading discussion, you're like, I'm gonna make it like this every week, and then I don't know, a few weeks and you're like, this is not working well, then you should probably change it.
Mid-course.
Mid-course.
Yeah. Or as soon as you see that this in-class discussion that you thought was going to last 30 minutes, and after 10 minutes, people are, throwing things around the room, or they've stopped talking, or it's all about the Game of Thrones this week, or whatever, it's broken down. Okay, you still have 20 minutes according to my schedule, but maybe there's something else that I can pull out of my back pocket and say, all right, we're done with this, or how do I redirect and change that immediately? And that requires a little bit of improv, oftentimes. Some planning to have things that you can pull out right away, but also a little bit of the willingness to say, okay, that didn't work, and let's go on from there. Take whatever they've given us and move it on.
I think one thing that helps there is if I'm trying something new, I tell the students that this is a new thing, right? And then they tend to be more forgiving if that happens. And also really willing to give feedback. If you say this is something new we're trying, and then you have some mechanism for them to give you immediate feedback.
I always tell my students that they are co-conspirators with me, right? I'm going to try this. You guys are my lab rats. You have to tell me, you take the cheese and you run with it, and when it stops working for you, let me know, and we'll work on this together. You're absolutely right. If it's something that they are subject to your whims, you're not giving them agency. By enlisting them and saying, hey, help me figure this out for the next set of students so that I can improve this course for the poor saps who have to suffer through it after you, they'll be like, oh yeah, they need my help because nobody should have to go through this the way that I had to go through this. And it helps them, and they feel good about it because you've given them agency, you've given them a chance to be designers in their class, to take control of their own teaching and learning. And that's a good thing. And you can do that on the fly as well. Like, all right, this isn't working. What can we do with this discussion that's been a train wreck, or how can we make this better? And again, this is for building feedback into your course. You can do this in every assignment, in every activity, through that end of session, the muddiest point idea, where on the way out, students write down, I still have questions about this, I don't get it. So leave it on the thing as I exit, and then afterwards, you go through, you collect these, they're anonymous, you can see what it is they learned, what they didn't learn, ideas for making it better. And they might give you some, they might not give you some. If it's anonymous and it's left on a door, fewer will. If it's something that you give them credit for, as the last quiz question or the last question in your assignment, how could this have been better for you? Or reflecting on what we did last week, think about, and this is one of the things that I like to do, I will revisit 2 weeks later and say, all right, 2 weeks ago, we did this. Learning objective for 2 weeks ago, whatever the thing that I wanted them to make sure that they took away. How well did we do this? What can we do next time to make it better? Again, enlist the students to give me feedback on, did you get it? Why did you or did you not get it? And how can you get it better? This is asking them to reflect 3 ways, right? Did I get it? Yes or no? Wait, I was supposed to get that? Huh, I didn't get that. Why didn't I get that? Well, we talked about it on a single PowerPoint and I missed it. How could you have gotten it better? What if we revisited it? What if we made it into a Kahoot game? What if we did this or that or the other thing? Reflecting on 3 different ways, and every time each one of those questions causes their synapses to get a little bit stronger, and that learning, that point, that outcome that you wanted them to learn 3 weeks ago, but they didn't, is now more deeply embedded. So I think that almost every assignment needs to have, that's why we have this, and I changed it from evaluation sheets to reflection sheet. It's a reflection, so what did you learn? How will you use it? Things like that. And you don't get points for that, so it's not worth anything for you to fill out, but other than my begging and pleading. But for students, if they get 2 points for answering it, they will.
I do have, so I have had an instructor who includes questions like that on an exam, which I really appreciate as a student, because 1 point is 1 point. But I would recommend for my in that case, like people are just gonna write like whatever they can write quickly and maybe not their actual feedback. So if you do it on a quiz or an exam, make sure there's like plenty of time for students to write a real answer rather than just skimming through it.
Yeah, not timed or not timed response. And it doesn't have to actually be a quiz, it can be an assignment afterwards, sometime in the next week. Reflect back on last week's, and it's a little free-form text assignment. And then you get it, they get a point. They've revisited the course and that content and that idea. All right, Canvas Kaltura Analytics. Ooh, let's not go there yet. Let's talk about learning from prior instructors, because that's sort of more along the lines that we're talking about. Ideas, how do we engage prior instructors? Do you know the instructors? So you can ask them a lot of the same things. And what are the pain points for them? Like that's a good way to say, what was the most troublesome assignment, or what do you have the most issues or difficulties with? It's worth buying them coffee because it will save you a lot of headache if you have to recreate it on your own. Other ideas for Tim? Is this a Canvas course that's already been created as well?
It's not, I mean, this is lecture, like a 3-time a week lecture, but it uses Canvas quite a lot for like free work and quizzing.
Excellent. And that brings me to the idea of, you can look at the castle hopping or the pre-work, in-class work, and post-work. Are you all familiar with this term? The idea is the top of the castle has these places for archers to hang out in, I guess. And they use this as before class, in class, and then sort of reflective work, and then before class again. So if you look at what assignments are they doing before class, and you say, you know, I'm having them do all these things, but in class is a mess. What's happening there? Is it a problem with what's happening in class, or is it a problem with what I'm asking them to do beforehand? And you can look at it with your own eyes, of course. Ask other instructors what their ideas are. Harry Brickhouse in LSS has, or Eleven Sciences, actually hired a student to sit in on his classes, gave her $500 and said, give me feedback each week on what you notice. So third party, not taking the class, doesn't have to, you know, kiss up or anything to get a good grade, can be very honest and actually has an opportunity to say, you know what, you did a terrible job this week. You know, you lost half the class, about 15 minutes in, consider this, consider that. And then asking the students, they've taken 20, 30, however many classes in their life before they took your class. You're familiar with your class and the way that you teach, and maybe you sat in on somebody else's class, so 1 or 2 different ways of teaching. They experience 3 or 4 different ways a day, depending on how many classes they have. So they have a lot of experience on what works and what doesn't work, and different personalities and different ideas for testing and different ideas for pre-class and post-class reflection. So again, if we can somehow harness that, because there's a lot, just like we learn from each other in the active teaching labs, we can learn from the students because, you know, take this times a dozen.
Are there other sections of the class you'll be teaching?
There's sections, you mean like leading discussion sections?
No, like, so you as the TA can also go to someone else's
Oh, I
section
see.
and see how they run it.
Got it. I think the only TA, but I could go, oh, it's over now, darn. No, I
We held this session too late.
Maybe you could also ask, like, what's been most time consuming in the past? Because often if it's really time consuming, there's room for improvements, or you can at least budget your time to do it well.
All right, should we look at then analytics? Open up Canvas Analytics, open up Kelter Analytics. Have any of you not tried this or looked at this yet? I'm gonna guess, Tim, that you haven't, and Dustin, because you're not using it, you haven't either. Will it be useful to you? We'll show you where it is and what it can and cannot do. Lynn, do you find these useful, Canvas Analytics?
Not really.
All right. That's an honest answer. That's actually one of the answers that we're finding with the Learning Analytics dashboard. So we have instructors who are like, okay, great, it shows me, well, here it is. There's your course view. As an instructor, you've got some of these extra things, including view course analytics. So we click on it, and we see there's activity by date. And if you roll over all of these, I think you get more information about it. All right, so January 7th through the 13th, we had 4 participations and 44 page views. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that before the class starts even, I've had some of my students have gone in on their own, unbidden by me, and they, out of their own curiosity, have looked at my course, and maybe on my course page I said, hi, welcome to my course page, click on this discussion and add a little note about who you are and why you're here. So they got to the page, 44 of them looked at it, or 4 of them looked at it 11 times, we don't know yet. And 4 people participated in it by doing something, whatever participation means, which I think means discussion, assignment. There's assignments, and that's under assignments, and I think that that's a different thing. I don't have a lot of assignments in the active teaching lab. I might not have any. Oh, that's submissions. Yeah, there it is. So that's an activity and submissions. So assignments will tell you if they've actually submitted a thing, but activity includes assignments and discussions and other things. And that may or may not be super helpful, but at least I know that some people showed up. All right. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
I was just gonna direct you to the submissions.
The one below it.
Or a
Okay.
different, like a previous course when we were doing more of the campus how-to stuff as more assignments.
Yeah. All right, and we actually have, all right, so for these submissions, they're red, and that means that they're missing. So we did an assignment, nobody submitted it. So that's fine. I always wish I could have a well-filled out actual class with the data scrubbed so that I could show you all of these things, not just a fake version of it. So the page views, what do page views tell us?
Maybe what's the extent they're in there.
Yeah,
I don't know what they're looking at, but
somebody's clicked, so that's something.
right.
The submissions, we know that they're actually participating in the course. And then grades are, of course, that, how well they're doing at these things. We look at our genes individually. Oh wait, no, there's one other thing I'm going to show you. Up here in the top corner, there's if you want graph view or if you want a grid view. So the grid view just breaks it down May 7th, we had 22 page views, no actions. 6, 43, and 4 actions, etc. Not a lot of great information on what that means. We don't know how long they spent on the page. Not that how long they spent on the page actually gives us any information, because they might have opened up the page, gone and made a sandwich. So, oh, we spent 12 hours on the page because we just left it on all weekend or whatever. The good news is the learning analytics people are aware of the uselessness of a lot of this, and they're trying to figure out ways to make it more useful. So when they build this learning analytics dashboard, there's a lot of information that Canvas collects besides what's here. And Canvas has just said, all right, well, this is our dashboard, page views, actions, date. There's a lot more information. But they didn't think it was useful. The learning analytics team is going through it again, the full amount, trying to figure out what's useful and what's not useful, what correlations there might be, putting things together. They've not come up with a great thing yet, but it's something.
Maybe the problem is that it's so general that you don't know exactly what page they're viewing or what they click to view that page.
And that's different from your web design, web app design,
Right.
where you can actually see, what do the hotspots look like?
Mm-hmm.
What are they looking at? Did they click the red button or the blue button?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. So we can also look at the individual students. Margine, for example, one of our troubled students. Here's why. She's got a lot of participations, page views 60, over 60, that's more than just about anybody else, but nothing assigned. 79 page views, 11 participations. Again, we can look at it as the graph, or we can say, well, what page views were they? Or when did she? And there's the submissions. When was it due? When was it submitted? What was the score? The grades. Here are the assignments and rubrics and such. So if you really nerd out on data like this, and you can think you can figure that out, that's how to access it. Kaltura gives you a little bit more information, a lot more information actually, it's much more useful. I don't know if I've got any good stuff to think about here, but alright, so we have this. Let's see, what do I have for my actions? Wait. So immediately I know that there were 2 views, but that's not what I'm looking for. Help me out, where do I go for analytics when?
No, I can't remember either. Was it under actions? I think there was like a
Yeah.
there's like a drop down menu. Analytics.
There it is. Alright, so actions, analytics. Alright, much fancier, right? Than that big numbers. Average score, I don't know what that means, but it's only 1 visit, that was me. Whether people commented, whether they liked it. Average view time, so that gives us something. And I think that please. Oh, this one had in-video quizzing, so it actually has like quiz questions in there, and whether people got it right or wrong. But again, I'm the most engaged user, and I didn't even click it. That's kind of sad. Your information will be a lot more interesting up here, I'm sure. But does it have student information in Kaltura?
If you scroll up, I think there's another tab that says people or users.
Oh yeah, users.
Yeah, and then it'll tell you who viewed it and how long.
Okay.
Yeah, much more useful because you can actually go in video by video and get feedback, on each one versus in Canvas, like you don't know what pages anybody's reviewing.
And then you can also export it, import it into Excel or Google Sheets if you want to do more graphs and such with it.
So I'm not really super familiar with this platform. So do you like link these videos from your course site?
So in Canvas, you can, there's like a button right in a Canvas page where you can stream a video from Kaltura.
Okay.
So Kaltura is kind of where you house videos, and then you can play them through Canvas. But then to the student, it just looks seamless, like a part of the Canvas page. But in the background, it's playing through Kaltura, so Kaltura keeps track of all the inputs.
Yeah, and adding video in Canvas is great if you have your own video that you want to create or you need it to be protected so that not anybody can click on it, but they have to be logged in through your course. In the edit mode, this little V pulls down to Kaltura Media. You click on that, and it brings up my login media information. In theory, there it is. So there's my collaborate thing right now that's happening. Oh, that did happen. Screen capture in Kaltura. My media galleries. So I can just pick one out. I can get more options here. Choose the size, things like that, and then just insert it into it. And then once it's in there, you can go back and check out all of these different analytics for that. So although Canvas doesn't give you great analytics, this piece that's embedded within Canvas does give you a lot finer grain detail.
So Kenny, is your goal to compare people who have watched the Kaltura videos and their grades versus grades of the students who attended?
Roughly, I don't know the students who attended. I can roughly guess who they are, just because they're the ones coming to the review sessions because no one shows up after class for those. But yeah, I was just curious because we have a 200 student course and I've been counting this last unit and we're averaging like 60, 70 students in the room.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, compared to those students, are these students who are not coming?
Are they passing?
But
Because the lecture material is all online, are there reasons? What is the advantage of having them come?
we feel like they're more engaged. So I'm looking at like I'm in one of the videos now, and not many are watching like the full through. There's people who have been to the page like 6, 7 times and haven't even managed to play it once. So yeah, I'm just curious. We think they'd be more engaged. I mean, if I try and watch a lecture video at home by myself, I'm not going to make it through. I'm going to have other tabs open. I'm going to be doing other stuff. I might just have it on in the background.
Are they full-size lectures, like 45 minutes a lecture?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's reasonable. Nobody will watch that.
Right. So yeah, I'm curious, how they compare. If they're getting anything out of it, that'd be nice to know. Because over the summer we do try and break it up, like what they're getting material-wise into like 10, 15-minute chunks, because that's a lot more manageable.
Yeah. Yeah. Smaller modules or chapters. And if you think about a face-to-face class, they say that you should have 7 minutes of this and then do an activity. 7 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes of that, do an activity. So if those 7 to 10 minute chunks can be, here's a video on that, break it. Go to the next one, break it. And that'll give you better analytics too, because then you know which part they're looking at. Or can you see what parts they're looking at?
In the same video, like if they're jumping around.
Yeah. And that's another question that I guess I'd have. are they able to answer whatever questions they need to know or learn or answer by skipping around, scanning through videos, and so if I watch 30 seconds here, I scan through the next 5 minutes, I watch 12 seconds here, I scan through the next thing. Is it counting 42 seconds watched because it's the 30 and then the 12 and then whatever? And it wouldn't show that I've watched the whole video, but it would.
Right, I'm not sure. I'm confused what the average drop off is looking at. Like, what does that mean? Do you know?
I don't know either. I mean, I think it's like if they start watching and then stop.
And then stop. It's like average view time. None of them are even close to the full video length, but yeah, most of them are in that kind of 20-25 minute range,
Okay.
which I totally understand.
And I guess another thing is, if I watch it at double speed, is a 45-minute or a 40-minute thing only counting at 20 minutes? Because in Kaltura you can do that. And I do when I watch it 1.5 speed generally, if I'm watching longer things that aren't fun to watch.
It might be useful too if you are able to separate them into smaller chunks and each one is only about one concept, then you can see, like, if one is getting a lot of hits, then this concept is more difficult or.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it might give you more information than a whole lecture.
For sure.
And that brings us to your question about evals and what's useful and not useful about it. If you have that one end of semester eval, you've got one question or 3 questions or whatever about the whole course. So what are the analytics? What do they tell you about the whole course versus section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, or even assignment, activity, assignment, that the finer grained questions you can ask them, the more times you get feedback from them, the more you'll be able to hone in and get something useful from it. Otherwise, yeah, you get things like, oh, I didn't make the scarf she wore, or, not useful stuff.
Yeah, so maybe the answer is they're just not as useful as taking evals along the way.
And the official course evals are required by the legislature as a way for students to be able to evaluate that for promotion and pay increases and all of these other things. Even though student evaluations have been shown over and over and over again, the research is really clear. They discriminate against women, they discriminate against people of color, they discriminate against all kinds of things. White males turn out really well in student evaluations. They're kind of terribly biased and not very useful information. Hi. We're just finishing up here. So that's what we've got, and I think we are out of time at this point.
I have one quick suggestion. I've seen some instructors do some things that have helped a little bit for course evals, and one is like when you are talking to the students right before you leave, if you're looking for specific feedback, like, I don't know if I want to use this textbook again, could you please comment on the textbook, like in the general question, or like, I want to be able to share this with students in like a more foundational class. Can you help me brainstorm ways to do that? And then another thing I've seen that's helpful is, like, I can't remember what we did last week, but if you give them a list of like the major projects or like units or something, just to refresh their memory.
Yeah.
So like, oh yeah, I do remember doing that, and I did have thoughts about that, instead of like, oh, I can't remember what we did in this class.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And that's another version of them seeing the content one more time, so that's good for their learning. So that's what we have for today. Come back tomorrow, we're going to talk about redesigning the course. And if you just drop off one of these on your way out, that'd be super helpful. Thank you.